At 15 years old, my next guest woke up to the news that a loved one might be gone forever. But in the midst of this crisis, he saw his life transformed forever. Welcome, Father Ronald, to 100 Huntley Street.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you wake up one Friday morning, 15 years old, and you get some horrific news. Tell us about this.
Well, it was not quite waking up, but it was in the midst of the afternoon, we would say. So I had gone to school, gone back home, was playing with my brothers, we were playing basketball, and my sister walked into the house, and she was very surprised, not having seen first my mom's car, and then said, well, where is Mom? I said, well, I was supposed to be in some place. She was supposed to pick you up after work. I said, well, she did come, but I told her that I was going to work a little later and to come back, or I'll call her, but she never did. And my sister, at that moment, was a bit distraught. And so she called, and then as she was making the phone call and she said hello, there was a different person at the end of the line. And that's when she collapsed.
And so you grew up in Haiti. This is in the context of being in Haiti.
Yes.
And so why, first of all, let's back up a little. Sure. Why, first of all, was your sister concerned? Why did she think automatically that something was wrong?
Well, around that time in 2005, there had been many kidnappings that were happening. The country was in a little bit of unrest, especially after the departure of the president, the former president at the time, Aristide. So it was not surprising. It was just a little concerning, well, where could she have gone? Usually the road is after she'd gone by my sister's place, she would come home directly. And so that was her concern.
And so she picks up the phone.
Picks up the phone,
and
yes.
Who's on the other line?
So one of the perpetrators that kidnapped my mom is on the other line, yes.
And what are they saying?
I still to this day do not know what they said to her. So my sister collapsed immediately, and my aunt picked up the phone, seeing this, and my brothers and I trying to help my sister at that moment to kind of gain consciousness again, to see what exactly happened. We were shocked at her reaction, and my aunt, and to her credit, kind of kept her composure, said, okay, and hang up the phone, and immediately called my dad.
And what was relayed to you by your aunt?
At first, nothing. She was on the phone trying to, and my aunt usually has a very calm demeanor about herself, so she said, I'll just talk to you afterwards. Call my dad, and my dad was aware of the situation. And afterwards, she proceeded to tell us that your mother's been abducted.
And what is going through a 15-year-old young man's mind when they hear those words? Those are words that no 15-year-old usually hears.
No. At first, I was just shocked.
Yeah.
It was just, I think I was numb from the moment. My brothers were crying all around me. I remember one of my youngest brother was basically on my lap. I was sitting down, and I just couldn't process exactly what happened. It was just surreal to me to think, like, is this happening to us right now? And I just basically saw myself reacting, and it was just at a moment of just total shock, and I was frozen. I think that's really what happened. I froze at that moment. And then my next step was to basically console my brother that was on my lap at that moment. But I couldn't feel any emotions.
And so from a faith perspective, you are obviously, as we can see, a man of faith.
Yes.
But back when you were 15 years old, what is the perspective of young Ronald from a faith perspective as you hear this heartbreaking news that your mother might not return?
Well, partly is to ask God, well, why is this happening to us? Why is this happening now? There was really no answer, or I can even process asking something like that. It was just maybe something happening. Well, this can't be true. Something will happen. Something will get fixed. So somehow God will come and do something to solve this situation. Maybe that's part of what was going on in my mind. I think it was just going so fast that I really couldn't process everything that was going on. Maybe those were a few things that were happening in my mind at the moment.
Was there any hope at that moment?
Yes.
Because again, you had heard so many stories of this happening.
Yes.
Was there hope?
Yes, hope and fear at the same time. The fear was that, especially with the cases that had happened before, that something would happen to her. And having heard the news and the many people that were kidnapped prior to my mom, those who were released, came out, some of them burnt, some of them tortured, some of them different things happened to them. And so that's where my mind went immediately afterwards. Okay, if she does come back, which we hope that she would, how, in what condition would she be?
Of course.
Yes.
So a couple days later, you do get good news.
Yes, we did.
What happened?
So on Sunday morning, it wasn't a regular Sunday morning, but it felt like another Sunday, we woke up and my brother's godmother came to the house. So over this series of the weekend, we had many people that came, that were praying with us, supporting us, encouraging us. Don't worry, things will happen. God will provide, things of that nature. And she said that my mom had been preparing for my youngest brother's first communion all week long. And it would have been something she would have looked forward to and anticipated, knowing her faith and everything that goes with that. And so she said, well, I've come to pick him up because he's supposed to be at the church at a certain time. And I know your mom's not here, so I'll take the role and do so. Many of the family members opposed to it at first and says, well, no, this is not the moment. This can wait. And this is where I stepped in and a cousin of mine stepped in and said, well, we're going to go with him. And so everybody else can stay. We're going to go with him. And part of the discussion was like, well, I know this is a very tragic moment, but who better can help than God? That was her mindset. And she was right. Very much so.
And then eventually your mother returns. Your mother is released from the captors.
Yes, she was released in the evening. But I would say prior to that, especially having gone to the church, supporting my youngest brother, and I remember talking to him prior to him getting to the church. I said, well, and as a young child, he really is not aware of exactly what's happening. You know, mom is not there, but at the same time, he's preparing himself to make his first communion. I said, well, and I know God does listen to the prayers of children. So I said to him, like, would you pray that mom would come back home today? And smiling, he said yes. And so just, it was a moment of relief, I would say, like seeing in his heart that, and in his face that, okay, this hasn't affected him as much. He's aware a little bit, but not quite. He was, I think, 6 or 7 years old at the time. And I remember it was an answer to a prayer. I remember praying after myself going to communion and going back to my pew praying that, Lord, your son died on a Friday and my mom was taken this past Friday. Your son rose on a Sunday. Would you bring my mom back this Sunday? And I remember that was not a prayer that I could have prayed on my own. This is truly the Holy Spirit praying through me at that moment. And I felt that when she came and she crossed those doors and we had heard that phone call. When we got the phone call, I was still in disbelief that she was coming back. But when I saw her cross that threshold, I was like, this is the answer. And everything, it's hard to explain exactly what happened. So it's just that joy and excitement, but at the same time, that joy and excitement that, oh my God, really, not in a very blasphemous way, but oh my God, you've answered our prayers. You have answered our prayers.
Thank you so much, Father Ronald.
My pleasure.
For your
You're welcome.
I hope that's an encouragement to you today. Maybe you're going through a really hard situation. I mean, I don't think any of us can compare our stories to Father Ronald's, but I know all of us have gone through times where we are battling with those two, this fear of the inevitable or fear of something that's happening in your life, but wanting so desperately to hold on to the hope of who Jesus is. I want to reassure you to hold on to that hope because he is there. He is there in the midst of your storm that you're going through at this very moment. Remember our prayer lines. They're available to you 24/7. Amazing people that would love to pray with you, encourage you. If you don't yet know Jesus and you've heard this story and you want to get to know him a little bit more, let our prayer partners know. They would love to encourage you, maybe get you a Bible and introduce you to the man who has changed our lives forever. Stay with us. We'll be right back.